Okay, Sean, I'll have an ambulance on the way. Okay.
A Gulfport rescue unit immediately responded, but they had no idea how serious the situation was.
I just felt like it was all my fault. If I would have made him stay in the house, then none of this would have happened.
Real heroes on the next Rescue 911.
On July 24th, 1987, 11-year-old Derek Pickering had spent the day like so many others with his best friend, Charles Galloway. Late that afternoon, Charles' parents, Bob and Karen, were getting ready for a special evening out.
It was a Friday evening about 6:15, 6:30, and Charles and Derek had been over at our house playing.
Charles' parents were just about to leave for dinner.
This was a very special day for us because it was our 16th wedding anniversary and our daughter's 15th birthday. Derek and Charles were going to go over to Derek's house. The weather wasn't real great, and they wanted to take Derek's dog home.
Well, Charles and Derek had been friends for a number of years, built tree houses in the vacant lot and climbed on the neighbors' roofs. They'd done a lot of things together.
When the boys arrived at Derek Pickering's house, his parents were out, and only his 13-year-old sister, Sean, was home.
You know, he's just a pain in the butt little brother, but he really is special to me.
Mom says I should stay in. It looks like it's gonna rain.
And, of course, he never listens to anything I say, so he went straight back out. So I said, oh, well, you know, I'm just going to ignore him.
I'm keeping my Ricky Jordan now.
Okay.
Traded 4 for him.
4 for him. Okay. What about 5? Let's go
5.
big.
No, you take it.
I was watching TV, and then I heard this bang, you know, boom.
Derek!
They always try to play jokes on me, and I figured it was just another joke, and it wasn't funny. It was really scaring me.
It was Sean.
Hello?
And she said, Charles and Derek are lying out there, and they won't talk to me. Those were her exact words.
I don't know, but I've been yelling, and I'm really scared.
As we drove up, you know, they weren't moving, and I really jumped out of the car before she even stopped. I knew it was serious. Karen knew it was serious.
All I noticed was that they weren't breathing. It was the most horrifying thing. You'd like to fall down and cry. I was panicking like crazy, but I knew I couldn't.
You breathing yet, Karen?
No!
There wasn't any affirmative response from either one of them to our CPR. I felt like I was doing it right, but it was, you know, something I had not done in 20 years.
Sean came out, and I called her and said, Sean, call 911 and give them the address.
Sean's call came in at 6:34 p.m.
911. I need an ambulance. Okay, let me get med medic on the line.
The call was passed to dispatcher Ann Ford.
What's the problem? My brother just stopped my lightning.
A respiratory therapist who lived nearby rushed over to help.
I know CPR. Okay, Sean, I'll have an ambulance on the way. Okay.
A Gulfport rescue unit immediately responded, but they had no idea how serious the situation was.
I just felt like it was all my fault. If I would have made him stay in the house, then none of this would have happened.
It had been nearly 4 minutes since the boys were struck by lightning. When paramedic Richard Chapman and his partner got to the scene, Charles and Derek were still not breathing.
It was 2-minute response time. On our arrival, we pulled up and there was not one but 2 children. And it was more or less a nightmare. I've been to mass casualty incidents, and nothing had ever prepared me to see 2 small children lying there basically dead. You could see burns to their neck area. You could smell the singed hair. It was a smell you never forget. I had just a terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. The one boy had a heartbeat but was not breathing on his own. The other boy was clinically dead in the sense that he didn't have a heartbeat and he was not breathing. I was just holding on to Karen, and I guess that was the first time I had maybe allowed myself to think that he might not live.
Okay, we got pulse over here.
Okay, hyperventilating. Shortly after intubating them, the second boy developed a heartbeat, so now we had 2 children in respiratory arrest. Rescue 10 headquarters, send me an engine company.
I saw them like taping stuff to Derek and giving him shots and stuff. And when I thought about him dying and, you know, not having anyone to fight with anymore or to call names, I started crying.
Six minutes after the call for help, additional life support units arrived, including paramedic supervisor Mike Stanton.
I saw that the fire department paramedics were treating these kids very aggressively, and I knew at that point that they had some pretty severe injuries.
To prevent overloading one emergency room, Derek and Charles were transported to separate hospitals. Both boys were in critical condition, but Charles continued to deteriorate.
En route to the hospital, he began to posture, which is usually a sign of some significant brain injury. In my past experience, that's not a good sign.
When the lightning struck,
Charles was admitted to Gulf Coast Community Hospital, where pediatrician Don Lagrone was on call.
With lightning, we're talking, with a direct hit, we're talking about millions of volts of electricity that may last for up to a second. The higher, more important surface parts of his brain were completely out of order. And that's really scary. When we see that, it's usually a prelude to death.
Ride the razor's edge between life and death with the people who walk it every day. Trauma, Life in the ER, tonight at 7 Eastern, only on Discovery Health Channel.
If faced with danger, what would you do? Would you react in time? See ordinary citizens become heroes. Rescue 911 continues next on Discovery Health Channel.
At nearby Memorial Hospital, Derek's condition had stabilized under the care of Dr. Ronald Bruni.
I suspect that Derek's burns were due mainly to a splash effect. Sitting next to his friend, who was directly struck by the lightning, his eardrum was ruptured, and it was probably from this loud clap of thunder being right close to him. He didn't respond appropriately to painful stimuli. His blood pressure was elevated. And yet, after a few hours, he began to recover, and after 12 hours, he was able to converse with people.
He was still, you know, a little weak, and I knew I couldn't beat him up yet, but the happiest part was when he came home.
But Charles was still in a deep coma.
We didn't know then if he was going to live or not. And then they took us in to see him. He looked awful. He was full of tubes, and his hair was all burned. And it was very frightening. I knew that he could die or have brain damage, but I honestly never believed that that was going to happen. And I guess that's a self-protective device, because, you know, I don't know how I would have held up had I really believed that.
Charles' parents took turns staying by his bedside. After 30 hours, his mother finally noticed a change.
He opened his eyes, and truly it might have been 2 seconds, but it was a great lift to my spirit.
3 years later, Charles has fully recovered. He still has no memory of the incident, but it has changed his life.
My relationship with my family and parents became, I believe, a lot closer because after all that I'd heard about all the stories and all the things they had done for me, I realized that how much they really cared for me.
It used to really burn me up when Charles would wear his cleats in the house and leave mud and clay all over the floor. And now we just clean it up, and we're glad that there's somebody there to leave the clay there.
Charles' mother, Karen, gave him and Derek each a lightning charm as a symbol of the bond between them.
This lightning charm is to remind us of our friendship, to show us like what we've been through together, and that we shouldn't separate because we share like a special thing together that hasn't happened around here. We'll be friends for life.
We all should take first aid and CPR courses every year. By learning basic life-saving techniques, we might be able to save the life of someone we love. This series is dedicated to all the men and women who answer our calls for help and are there when we need them most. I'm William Shatner. Join us again next week for more true stories on Rescue 911.
Next, step inside the command center where the calls for help are answered and meet the real-life heroes who save lives. Stay tuned for another episode of Rescue 911. Next on Discovery Health Channel. Real life, medicine, miracles.
Mr. Shapiro, step out of the car, please.